ones, we are going to begin the services. If everyone would have a seat, please. We are going to begin the funeral service. Please have a seat. We are going to begin the services. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. We are going to begin the funeral service for Mrs. Barbara Schwartz. I'd ask you kindly, if you have a phone, to place it into silent mode or turn it completely off at this time. I'd also like to welcome, on behalf of the family, anybody visiting us via live stream. Thank you for attending. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Amy Memisfoller of Beth Emet, the Free Synagogue in Evanston.
We're going to begin our service this morning with the ancient ritual known as kriya. Kriya means tearing or rending the garment. When our patriarch Jacob heard the news that he thought his son Joseph had died, he tore his clothing in angst, and that's what we do now. For those of you who are sitting in the first row, some of you indeed wearing the ribbon itself, I invite all of you in the first row to rise as you're able. And we repeat this blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan ha'emet, which means, blessed are you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, judge of truth. And so we tear these ribbons on the outside of our clothing as a symbol of how our hearts feel inside, which is torn. And you may be seated. Death has taken our beloved Barbara Schwartz. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Barbara's love that united us in life, which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Adonai ro'i lo echzar binot deshet yarbetseni al mei menuchot yenachaleni נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות לא אירא, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי, תשענת בשמן ראשי. כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. If you would like to join me in the translation of the 23rd Psalm, the words are on the inside of your folders. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As we find comfort in those ancient words, so too might we find comfort in these more modern words of liturgy written by Rabbi Alvin Fine that we can find in our High Holy Day prayer books. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing, from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting.
We are so honored and grateful to be celebrating my Grandma Eve today as her grandchildren. She was the sweetest, warmest, most loving grandmother we could have asked for, and I'm so fortunate to have the fondest memories of her as a grandparent to carry with me. My grandma always took great care to show each of us how much she loved us. It was evident that she wanted each of us to feel special and to feel loved from the small but meaningful gestures she made throughout our lives. When we were younger and she would come to see us in the city, she always had a bag of butterscotch candies to share with us in her purse, which, by the way, she only called her pocketbook. And I always looked forward to her visits because of the butterscotch candy, but it was only as I got older that I realized the thoughtfulness of her making sure her pocketbook was stocked for us just to bring us a moment of simple joy. My grandma also never forgot a holiday or a birthday and always made sure to have our latest addresses on hand in college, which was a lot of addresses over the years, so she could send a creative card or send an old photograph she wanted to share or an old news article that she thought we would enjoy. I always thought it was funny when she mailed me a baby photo of myself because she wanted me to have it instead of holding on to it for memories at her house, but it's just the kind of selfless grandmother that she was, always wanting to make us smile. One of the qualities I admire most about my grandma was that she didn't have a judgmental bone in her body, and she was really proud of us. She never made us feel like we should have called more or visited more, and just was always happy to chat with us or visit with us. Whenever we shared anything about our lives, she seemed genuinely pleased no matter what came out of our mouths. She particularly seemed excited about me living in New York and the connection that gave us because of her days living in New York, and would often laugh and compare how much she paid for rent then versus what I pay for rent now. I'm so grateful that I'll always have memories of my grandma visiting us downtown or us coming to Evanston to spend time together. My grandma had a creative side which she shared with us, whether showing us the watercolor painting she made of the flowers in her backyard or bringing us a strawberry plant to see if we could grow any strawberries ourselves in our backyard. I think anyone who knew her would agree that her most memorable quality was her wicked sharp sense of humor. There was no situation she couldn't find humor in, even up to the hilarious conversations we each got to have with her on FaceTime at the very end. I wanted to share on behalf of Justin that as the youngest grandchild, most of the years he was old enough to remember were years where my grandma's physical health was declining. But given that, one would expect that he had a different impression of her than the rest of us, or only knew her as sick or elderly. Instead, he felt the opposite and viewed her as extremely sharp and with it, always taking care to ask us about what was going on in our lives and keep up with every thread of any conversation. Justin also had the most chances to spend time with our grandma in the past few years while he lived in Chicago after we left for college, and he never noticed a change in her wit or intuition. It's impossible to celebrate my grandma's life without celebrating her sidekick, Larry. My siblings and I never met our biological grandfathers, so we have been extra blessed, Larry, by the ways you showed up for us and acted as our grandfather figure. Every event, meal, or milestone that Grandma Eve came to, you also came to, and we know how rare that is, and we're so beyond appreciative for the care that you showed her and all of us. I'm so lucky I was able to come to Chicago last week and share a lovely dinner with her on Monday night, just chatting and hanging out. We all feel so lucky to have been her grandchildren, and her memory will always be a blessing.
Hi, take my mask off. Excuse me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sydney, Emily's sister. So thank you all for coming here to support my family and celebrating my Grandma Eve. Grandma Eve meant the world to me. My entire life growing up, we would drive from the city to Eve's place in Evanston. It's a drive I could now do in my sleep. There was always this moment when we passed the cemetery on Sheridan Road, when you officially cross into Evanston, where I could feel all of my stressors of the day lift, because I knew that I was headed toward a destination that represents warmth, consistency, and love. Sorry. Eve fostered that kind of environment so effortlessly. Whether it was going across the street from her house to play for hours in the park, or sitting in her backyard watching the birds eat the food she and Larry put out for them, and then watch a dozen other types of animals come eat the food they put out for the birds. Eve would show me her paintings, or we'd look through old photo albums and she'd tell me about her days growing up in Connecticut. Eve was such a giver. One time she called me to come visit her because she was having a garage sale, but really she just put a bunch of old family heirlooms on the dining room table, told stories about them, and asked me to take what I thought was special. Eve was also a giver in that she taught me what I believe to be the most invaluable life lesson of all, to celebrate and embrace each other's differences. She made sure that everyone in her presence felt special, and she subtly encouraged all who crossed her path to love themselves for exactly who they were. Eve had the gift of turning what I thought to be the most mundane things, into something beautiful. As I've gotten older and spent less time in Chicago, don't blow my nose, I looked forward to our calls. Catching up with Eve is so fun. She never put too much weight on the big things and always pointed out the joy, humor, and meaning of everyday life. I love her for that, for reminding me not to ignore the little day-to-day things that make up what life is all about and bring me a little closer to her while I was far away. We are so lucky to have grown up so close to Eve, and even though it's deeply painful that she isn't with us anymore, I know she's living through us all. Thank you.
Hi, give me a minute with my mask. Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm Ellen's daughter and Eve's granddaughter. I want to echo everything that Sydney and Emily said. I would say some of my fondest memories from my childhood are weekends in Evanston at my Grandma Eve's. I'm from Minneapolis, so it was always a fly-in. My grandma was full of life and spirit. When I spoke to her several days ago, she shared her excitement about her tomato juice, found joy in the beautiful big windows in her room, and said all that was missing was music. Sorry. Just about the only cards I regularly receive in the mail are from my grandma. Apart from the usual birthday wishes, I have accumulated a tall stack of Halloween, Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's, and Valentine's Day well wishes saved in a drawer. She was kind, giving, and jumped on any excuse to show her grandchildren love, even if it meant shipping me a box of homemade stale cookies. My grandma loved her family deeply and showed it through an abundance of food and home-cooked meals. I have vivid memories of being picked up from O'Hare, met with grapes and smushed PB&Js in the car, and I'm convinced there is nothing my grandma loved more than making brisket and spending an evening with loved ones around the dinner table. My grandma had a way of bringing people together. My grandma lived a rich, full life surrounded by the people she loved the most. In moments like these, I'm reminded of a quote I saw years ago that has stuck with me. How lucky are we to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard? Thank you.
It's my understanding that that Hayuta is ready to share her words, and I want to thank her grandchildren for coming forward and sharing your experiences with us. So we'll try Hayuta now in Israel.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Okay. So Barbara is how I called her, was my cousin, actually my second cousin. But we had a very special connection that started in 1983 when I landed in Chicago, a fresh off the boat 21-year-old Israeli girl, my very first time to America. She waited for me at the airport, and despite my worries, I recognized her quickly and easily. I just knew she was my family. Years later, that special knowing was transferred to my kids with the same kind of obvious ease. And you can't see them, but they're all on the live stream with us from France, from Los Angeles, from Israel, all four of them. For many years, Barbara was truly there for me, a sort of parental rep. And then, as life goes, I became the one to be there for her. We had deep and honest conversations about ourselves, our relationships, our kids, our lives, and life in general. There are letters between Barbara and my mother and aunt dating all the way back to when they survived the Holocaust, even before she actually met them. She was an American high school girl back then. They were Auschwitz survivors building a new country. She wrote to them about which subjects she was going to be taking in the next school year, and it was just beautiful. And the beginning of a friendship and a family relationship for their entire lives. She knew things about my mom that no one else knew, deeply hidden secrets that were shared across cultures and oceans, way before the internet made it easy. I'm sure she only told me some of them. Barbara had regrets. She regretted being too strict with her kids, Ian, Ellen, and Jane, too serious. She also regretted not really sitting Shiva, all of you guys together after your dad died, Harold. She felt that it was a missed opportunity for closeness. She was also fun and funny and witty and loving. She had a beautiful smile and blue eyes to die for. She was honest. She was real. I loved that about her. She never gave up feeling better, physically and emotionally, asking me for advice on both and trying again and again and again. Life wasn't easy for Barbara, but she kept on trying to make it better, to be happier. She died trying. And boy, did she choose well in rebuilding her life with Larry, her man, her mensch, her friend, a love story to inspire us all. I love you, my Barbara. I know you loved me, you always told me. Please say hi to my Ima and Abba up there in heaven. Thank you.
Eve's children, one at a time, will come and share their words. Jane, then Ellen, then Ian.
Hi there, can you hear me in the back? Okay, I'm Jane, I'm Eve's daughter. Hannah's my backup reader in case I get too upset. So thanks for your patience. Here's what I want to say about my mom. She was beautiful, she was smart, she was a hard worker. But here's what I'll remember most. Her heartfelt mission was to support others as a friend, a relative, and most of all, a mom. She would have done anything for us, and over the years she did. As a kid, she took good care of us, as many moms do for their little ones, but with extra care and attention to detail. She made it her responsibility to make sure we did well in school, were able to participate in activities we loved, and had friends. And her giving never stopped. She was always there for me through my teens and 20s up until now. Besides doing things for me, she always wanted to give me things, especially from her home, as it warmed her heart to think I would use her things. The thing she most wanted to give me, though, was food. When I would come for dinner, she never missed a chance to send me home with leftovers. We joked that there were no grocery stores in Chicago, in spite of the fact that I live within half a mile of 4 of them. If not for her food, I would have starved. #Jewish mother. I want to share thoughts on 2 special relationships besides with her kids. So Adriana, I don't know where you are, was her longtime caregiver of 20 years. It was a working relationship, but also grew into a mutual, deeply loving friendship. I'll forever be grateful. I'll forever be grateful for Adriana for taking such good care of my mother. And even though it was hard on Mom to not be able to care for herself completely, together they made the situation into something really nice for both of them. And I know that a lot of people have mentioned Larry, but I want to say this. Mom was also lucky enough to have not 1, but 2 long-term loving partners. Mom told me that Larry would take her hand each night before sleep and say, "I love you." My mother and I did not have a perfect relationship, but I loved her very much, and she loved me unconditionally. So one of the things I lost when she died was someone who loved me so, so much without rhyme or reason. That kind of love is rare, and I already know I didn't appreciate it enough when I had it, and now it's gone, and I miss her so much already. My mother loved watching birds out of her kitchen window. In honor of this, I want to end with a poem. I think my mom would have loved it, and the end reminds me of my relationship with her. Hope is the Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm, that could have basked the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Ellen, Eve's daughter, Ella's daughter, and I'm going to share some memories about my mom. She was a Jewish mother in the very best of ways. And she always wanted us to carry a fancy handkerchief instead of a Kleenex to funerals. She showed me unconditional love. She was caring, generous, supportive, and kind. And she taught me by example to be the same. And I hope I've passed that on to my daughter, Hannah. She was loving to family and friends, including, of course, Larry, and also her loyal, devoted, longtime caregiver, Adriana, and they shared a special bond. She was an amazing cook. She made everything from scratch. She taught us how to make challah every Friday night, to braid it and put the egg yolk stuff on it to make it shiny. She made the best, I called it her stringy meat. It's brisket. And other delicious Jewish foods. In summer, we made homemade mulberry jam from the tree in our backyard. She had an enormous sweet tooth, which she unfortunately passed to me and to Hannah. When I visited her in the hospital last week, which was a visit I'll always treasure, she had me help order her dinner, and she said, "For dessert, will you ask them for 3 chocolate chip cookies?" Not 1, but 3. And then they said, "No, you're on a special diet." And she said, "Will you ask them if I could have a chocolate brownie instead?" She loved reading, and especially fiction and short stories, and she was always recommending books to me. And she passed that passion to me. She liked singing and was in a women's choir. She took piano lessons. She loved classical music. She also loved watercolor painting and made some beautiful florals. She enjoyed embroidery and needlework and mending, and gave me my love of sewing and crafting. And we often worked together on hand sewing and crafts. She valued her Jewish faith and ancestry and was working on her genealogy to pass down to us. She taught me funny Yiddish words. She said I was a great balabusta, which means a good housewife in Yiddish, which is considered the highest compliment. She was always concerned about me, and she would always tell me to put on a label because she was cold. That's an undershirt in Yiddish. She was the best grandma ever to my daughter, Hannah. She came to Minnesota before Hannah was born, and this is one of my most cherished memories of how she shared her unconditional love. We went shopping for everything the baby would need, from the diapers to the diaper pail to the clothes and the stroller and the car seat and the crib and the mattress and all that stuff, because she wanted to make sure I was ready and supported. She was so proud of Hannah and loved her so much. And then as a brand new mom, while I was in Minnesota without my immediate family, I asked her to come up often. So the first couple weeks and months of Hannah's life, she was always there with a phone call away. I would call, I'd say, "Mom, I need you," and she'd be on the next flight coming up for a week. She always complimented me and told me that I was a great mother and that I was so capable in everything I did. She taught me to always pee before you leave the house, and then the first thing to do when you return home is make sure you wash your hands. And she said to always bring a snack wherever you went, because you never know when you might get hungry, or bring an orange because you never know when you might get thirsty. Mom, I'll miss you so much. I love you. May you rest in peace. I wish you could be here. Sorry. To see all of us together, your family and friends together. Thank you, everyone, for coming to honor my mother. She had wanted a party after her death, a celebration of her life, and we're having a Shiva to do that. And at the Shiva, my wish for everyone, or at some point today, is to have a huge, fattening, indulgent, delicious, sweet treat, because that's what she herself would have wanted.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ian Schwartz, Eve's favorite son. My mother was a very special woman with some very exceptional qualities. She was loving, caring, nurturing, always there for me, smart, beautiful, funny, quick-witted, and as many of you recalled in your texts to me after she passed away, she had a great sense of humor. She was born and raised in Willimantic, a small town in rural Connecticut, where she lived with her parents and her loving brother Izzy, who now lives in Thailand and has for almost all his adult life. Despite the distance between Evanston and Thailand, Izzy and my mom remained extremely close throughout their lives, and they spoke virtually every week until the day she died. And the same can be said for her loving Israeli cousin Hayuta, who lives in Israel but always stayed in close touch with my mom and had a special place in her heart. My mom was a stellar student, and after graduating high school, she went to college at the University of Connecticut, where she excelled and rose to the very top of her class. Earlier this week, on Monday evening, which was the day before she died, my mom was 100% with it and in great spirits. And after eating a Subway sandwich as an appetizer before her pasta dinner that Evanston Hospital offered, we had a very special evening reminiscing about our lives and sharing stories and happy memories. She mentioned that out of the thousands of students in her graduating class at UConn, she was among the group of the top 5 who were each given the academic honor University Scholar. Excuse me. My mom was a stellar, I already said that. My mom was blessed to FaceTime each of her grandchildren on Monday evening, and when it was Justin's turn, she asked him what his favorite subjects were at college. When he replied chemistry and biology, she reminded him that oxygen is an element of group 16 on the periodic table, and then scrunched up her face and jokingly asked, "What on earth are you going to do after studying those subjects?" When I went to college, I majored in home economics and took much more practical classes like how to set the table. After graduating from UConn, my mom put her home economics degree and brilliant mind to work, and she became a dietitian. And not only was she a good dietitian, word on the street that she was that she was a pretty good-looking one as well. As my mom told the story, she was driving around the streets of New York in her MG convertible when my dad spotted her and instantly fell in love. So much so that he wrote down her license plate, called the state of New York, and told them that he was a doctor and that it was crucial that he know the name of the person to whom the plate was registered. His ridiculous story somehow worked, and he got my mom's number, called her up, and the rest, as they say, is history. My mom and dad truly loved one another, and shortly after they married, my mom got pregnant with me. One of her favorite stories took place on the day I was born. My mom was having strong contractions and knew that it was time to go to the hospital. My dad graciously volunteered to drive her there despite having a bad cold. When they arrived at the hospital, my dad dropped my mom off and told her that because he had a cold, he was going home to take a nap. He did ask her to please call him after she had the baby so that he could come back and pick her up, which is exactly what happened. Ellen came a year later, and my sister Jane 2 years after that. Having 3 kids under the age of 3 was hard work and certainly had its challenges, but my parents prevailed nonetheless. And looking back, they showed me the blueprint for what I now consider to be the perfect marriage, and it goes something like this. My dad worked, and my mom did literally everything else. But she did get him back on more than one occasion by making him go on vacation to Florida or Mexico or wherever he went with 3 screaming kids while she chilled out and had luxurious staycations at home. And notwithstanding the occasional vacations away from each other, which I think were actually good for their marriage, my sisters and I were raised in a very warm and nurturing home. Being Jewish was very much a part of my parents' identity, and some of my favorite memories were of having Shabbat dinners with my family every Friday night. My mom was a fantastic cook, and I always look forward to sitting around the Shabbat table with my family and singing the prayers over the candles, wine, and bread before eating the delicious meal my mom had prepared. We had some great traditions, including singing the long Kiddush together, and my dad asking every week if anyone knew why the challah was covered. The answer, by the way, for those of you not in the know, is so it won't be embarrassed that the wine is blessed first. And I remember that even when we got to high school and wanted to go out with our friends on Friday nights, my parents insisted that we had Shabbat dinner at home with them first, which I very much appreciate now, although at the time I'm not so sure I did. Sadly, my dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor when my mom was only 54 years old, and she stood by his side every day from the day he was diagnosed until the day he died 9 months later, cooking his favorite meals and soups that filled our house with beautiful smells, taking him to his doctor appointments, caring for him, loving him, and making sure that he was as comfortable as he could be until the day he peacefully passed away in the bed that she had made for him in our family room off the kitchen in our house on Sheridan Road. And I remember that she did the same thing for her mother, my grandma Celia, when Celia's health was failing and when Celia passed away a few years after my father. Although my mom missed my father terribly, she was able to fight through her sadness and grief, and she happily fell in love again. Some people, I think, go through life never finding their true soulmate. My mom was lucky to find hers twice. Not long after my dad passed away, my mom met Larry Warshaw, and although they never formally married, they lived together as husband and wife in Southeast Evanston for over 30 years. They had many similar interests and enjoyed taking walks together and going to plays, movies, and out to dinner with their many friends. They had a great partnership and truly enjoyed each other's company. And while my mom's mind always remained sharp, she had significant challenges in the latter part of her life, including the fact that she was unable to walk and was in a wheelchair for many years before she passed away. Despite these challenges, Larry's love for my mom never wavered. Larry became my mom's primary caregiver and enabled her to live the best life possible together with him in their home, no matter how difficult things became. Larry is 91 years old, but acts like he's 50 and was by my mom's side every day until she died. Larry was also a grandfather to my kids who never knew either of their biological grandfathers, and he would make sure that my mom was at every kid's play, dance recital, and sporting event that she was able to attend. And this was no easy task. Once my mom became unable to walk, Larry had a chairlift built on the stairs from the first floor to the second floor of their house, and he transferred her from her wheelchair to the chairlift and back again every time she wanted to go from one floor to the next. And because there are steps leading to both the front and back doors of their house, Larry also had a ramp and chairlift constructed off their back deck so that my mom could easily come and go. Whenever they left the house together, Larry would lower my mom down in her wheelchair to the backyard, walk her to his car, help her out of her wheelchair and into the car, drive to dinner or a play or wherever they were headed, and do the same thing in reverse when they returned home. And he always did it with a smile on his face, never wavering, never complaining, always patient. And he did it graciously and he did it lovingly. My mom often said to me that Larry Warshaw was a good man, and it's easy to see why. Larry, I know that I speak for Susan and Ellen and Jane and all our kids and extended family and friends when I tell you how deeply grateful and thankful I am for everything that you did for my mother. I know that my mom loved you dearly, and there is no doubt in my mind that her life would not have been the same without you. She was truly blessed to have you as her loving partner for so many years. And there is one more person who we are all especially grateful for, and that is my mom's dear friend and caregiver, Adriana. Adriana worked for my mother for over 20 years, but it was indeed much more of a friendship than it was a working relationship. Just as Larry did on nights and weekends, Adriana cared for my mom during the day, helping her with life's daily tasks and taking her in her wheelchair to doctors' appointments, lunches, shopping, and many other adventures. Adriana spent more time with my mom than anyone except Larry over the last 20 years of her life. And she always had, she always had my mom's back. God help the doctor who kept my mom waiting more than 20 minutes when Adriana was around. My mom and Adriana had a very real, trusting, honest, and open relationship. My mom gave Adriana plenty of shit, and Adriana gave it right back to her. It was truly a beautiful thing to see. Adriana, I can't thank you enough for everything that you did for my mom. I know that she loved you very much. Mom, thank you for being the best mother a son could ever have. I would like to conclude with a poem by Amy Finley that I think lovingly conveys the feelings that I have for you. It's called A Beautiful Mother. Your love, your sacrifice, your smile, you left a legacy in even the smallest things. You gave so much of yourself, loving others unselfishly and unconditionally. You were a light, a beacon of fire, burning bright through the years. You put your burdens on the shelf, giving your heart so freely and beautifully. You brought laughter, learning, and joy into moments large and small. Your heart was your true wealth, a beautiful mother inside and out.
Thank you, each one of you, for your words from the heart, from your personal experiences. And as you have shared those stories, at the risk of repeating stories that are worth repeating, I'd like to offer you some of my own words and hope that they will be a comfort to you at this time. This week, Jews around the world are reading in our Torah what is often referred to as the Holiness Code. Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. What's so interesting about the commandments in this Torah portion is how many of them focus not only what we do in order to be religious or pious in our relationship to God, but also about how we treat other people. How we interact with human beings as well as God is what makes us holy. Revere your mother and your father. Do not reap the corners of your field, nor gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not pick bare your vineyard, nor gather the fallen fruit. Rather, leave them for the poor and the stranger. Do not steal. Do not deal falsely with others. Do not put a stumbling block before the blind. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. These central principles of Judaism remind me of Eve Barbara Schwartz, for she was someone who appreciated and embraced the traditions of Judaism, and also core to her values were how she treated other people. She was open-minded and faithful, as well as witty, bright, creative, and hardworking. Relationships were central to her. For Eve, Barbara was a beloved daughter, sister, mother, wife, partner, grandmother, family member, and friend to many, and she will be dearly missed. Words of a eulogy could never capture all 87 years of her life, just as we couldn't say it all the other day. And repeating some of those parts of Eve Barbara's life that we will continue to tell and retell, I'd like to share with you these thoughts about Eve Barbara Schwartz, and hope they will offer you comfort and memories of joy. Eve Barbara Schwartz was born in Connecticut to parents Harry and Celia Freedman, Zichronam Levracha. Back east, she was known to many growing up by her middle name, Barbara. She was the older sister to her adored younger brother, Israel, known by his nickname, Izzy. And the family shared the other day that Eve, Barbara, and Izzy could not have been more different in their learning styles and approach to education. During high school, Eve was the one who focused on academics and was in the English classes for those looking to go to college after high school. Izzy jokes that during his high school years, he should have been in the English classes for those who would operate bulldozers after graduation. And Izzy credits his career to his sister, for it was she who supported his heading to prep school, then to Citadel, which led him to flying airplanes as a living. As we heard earlier, these two siblings remained close and in touch throughout life, despite the distance and time zones between Chicago and Thailand. Following high school, we've learned that Eve Barbara went to the University of Connecticut, majored in home economics, and was a top scholar. This news does not surprise those of us who engaged in conversation with her. She was very bright and seemed to have an interest and knowledge on so many subjects. From personal experience, I share that to have a conversation with Eve was a brain-stimulating exercise. Eve, as we learned, became a dietitian where she worked at a hospital. In addition to being bright, she was also beautiful. As we heard the story, driving around in that MG convertible, she was a sight of beauty in the eyes of Dr. Harold Schwartz. 17 years her senior, Harold had not envisioned that he would have a family. How blessed he and Eve were. The two of them raised 3 beautiful children. When Harold found himself looking for a job when the kids were very young, his nationwide search brought the family to Chicago, where they set down roots, made lifetime friendships, and raised their family. Eve was a loving mother of Ian, Ellen, and Jane, and then later to Susan when you became part of the family. In the early years, you recall how devoted your mother was to your lives, how she signed you up for enriching programs and took you wherever you needed to go. She went out of her way to make sure you lived happy lives. As was mentioned earlier and worth repeating, your mother's cooking. She was such a talented cook, and she loved to cook for everyone. You recall multiple course, homemade meals every night. With your father, your mother raised you in a home where the traditions, customs, and yes, food of the Jewish heritage were central. You recall fond memories of celebrating Jewish occasions with the chug. Many of those people she kept touch with for a long time. She took a secret pride, even as she downplayed how delicious her food was when she was able to feed others. It gave her great joy to see you enjoying her cooking. And then there are the intangible gifts that she gave each of you. Ian, you can see how your work ethic is like that of your mother's. Ellen, you may have inherited your mother's crafty and creative gene. More than that, your mother taught you how to be such an unconditionally loving mother, caring and devoted. Jane, you can see that your open-mindedness and accepting of people comes from your mother. And it's values such as these that have shaped who you are throughout your lives. How hard it was when you were all in your 20s and your father, who had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, died of cancer. Eve cared for him so deeply and provided him with whatever he needed until the end. She was devastated and couldn't imagine at the time finding another phenomenal human being. A few years later, enter Larry Warshaw. As we've heard, Larry, you were her incredible partner of over 30 years. Different from Harold, especially when it came to the area of being handy with tools. Larry, you had a beautiful friendship and relationship with Eve, based in kindness and caring for one another. You met at the theater, and when you saw that Eve was there alone, you invited her to sit with you. When she learned more about you and that it was safe to do so, she went out with you. Throughout your years together, socializing with others and friendships with others, those were central to your relationship. Through all Eve's physical challenges, Larry, you did what she needed to make it happen, as we heard, from redesigning the home to physically lifting and carrying her, enabling her to engage in life, whether it was seeing friends socially or attending her grandchildren's events. And she built a special relationship with your family, Nan and Adam, and then Mark and Melissa and their children. Eve was also a proud grandmother to Emily, Sydney, Justin, and Hannah. Some might say that you inherited your grandmother's intellect. Some people were even saying that maybe genius skips a generation. And if not, then certainly her value of education. You think of how you could talk to her about current events and anything going on in the modern world. She loved celebrating milestones with you and feeding you and giving you gifts. She would check with you to see if you were wearing something she had picked out just for you. Your grandmother also had a knack for mentioning aloud the elephant in the room. She said what was on everyone's mind that no one else wanted to say. And she did it in a way that wasn't judgmental or mean, but often with humor, allowing those present to breathe a sigh of relief, if not laugh. And as we've heard, Eve cherished her friendship with her devoted caregiver, Adriana. Your patience and caring helped Eve live her life with dignity. And the other things about Eve Barbara Freedman Schwartz, how she was very creative and talented with crafts, crafting with the kids, especially in their younger years. And she herself painted. We heard about the beautiful florals. How she loved singing and piano lessons. How she loved going to Beth Emet for Shabbat services, raised her children there, volunteered for Beth Emet often in the form of cooking, and more. How she was an avid reader. How she was welcoming and inclusive of all people, and particularly open-minded around issues connected to the LGBTQ community. That sharp wit and sense of humor, right? Whenever she checked into Evanston Hospital, she would say, well, somebody's got to keep them in business. How she was a loyal friend and kept up relationships over many years. How her mind remained sharp till the very end. And all the other things about Eve Barbara Schwartz that would take another 87 years to tell. Kedoshim to you, you shall be holy, not only in relationship to God, but in the relationships with the people in your life and how you treat them. For those of us who are able to develop a relationship with Eve Barbara, we understand that sacredness and how blessed we are because of that relationship. At the end of Eve Barbara Schwartz's life, she too was blessed to have her mental prowess and sharpness to the end. And because of that, she was able to enjoy those loved ones in her life with whom she was closest. Although she is no longer with us physically in this world, something of Eve Schwartz can never die. She lives on in our memories and in the hearts of all who knew her. O God of comfort, comfort and strengthen us now, and help us to keep alive the memory so dear to us in Eve Barbara Schwartz. Amen. We pause now for a moment of silence where we each might recall a memory we shared with Eve. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, God, our rock and our Redeemer. As we are able, we rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Masirim Et Nishmat Chava Bela Bat Hershel Ve'elka Bela Shehalcha Le'olama Barachamim Yastireha Beseter Knafav Le'olamim Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Eve Barbara Schwartz, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Please be seated for a moment. This does conclude the service here at the chapel. The family will receive condolences beginning today, immediately following the interment, and then tomorrow, Saturday, from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. at the Schwartz Warshaw residence, 1328 Hinman Avenue in Evanston. That information is on your folders as well as the hours. And it's also on our website. The interment will take place at Shalom Memorial Park, that's 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. The procession will form in our parking lot. Please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times. Put your emergency blinkers on. Attach the orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of your front windshield. And we'll also attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you. Mrs. Schwartz's grandchildren will serve as pallbearers. Emily Schwartz, Sydney Schwartz, Justin Schwartz, and Hannah Mickelson. At this time, I would ask that everyone please rise As the family and the rabbi are escorted from the chapel, pallbearers, step forward, please.